chance to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in. What a comeback.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. The Saints wrapped up Game 2 of their preseason this past weekend. Everyone made it out alive from the tropical stormquake Hillary. Thank God. It was looking a little shaky there for a minute. So going into Week 3 of the preseason leads us into the all-important question of who is going to make that final 53-man roster. In this episode, we're going to go into a little bit of what we saw in the Chargers game. You know, it's mostly backup, so it's not going to be a full game analysis. We'll talk about, you know, who performed well, who each of us liked, and maybe some other things that stood out if there was anything. And then we're going to get into, you know, who's left on the roster and what positions are going to be the most hotly contested, who's going to be the hardest to make that cut for. So, Max, you watched the Chargers game. I mean, it was all backups. You had Jameis starting. Henry came in later. But did you have any takeaways, anybody in particular that you were high on from that game?
Yeah, I can tell you who I was not high on, and thankfully he has already been removed from the team. That's Bryan Edwards. I think we can all agree on that one.
Yeah, he just looked like he didn't even care. Zero catches, 4 targets. Well done.
Yeah, well, he also had 2 touchdowns called back because of his...
That he didn't catch. That were other players for his...
Yeah, his shenanigans.
Yep.
He got 2 touchdowns called back. So obviously he was on the bad side of last week's game. Lalos, the defensive end, 3 sacks.
The Greek Freak.
Man, that was fantastic. I loved what I saw out of Jake Haener.
Yep.
If we're being honest, you know, he had command of the offense this week. I think the week before he looked a little tentative, and just, you know, he had rookie jitters. He looked like a rookie. This past week, I thought he had command. He was really slinging the ball.
He got away with one though on that third down play, on the post route, through the corner's hands, straight in. Who dropped it? Tight end dropped it.
Oh, yeah, Kroll dropped it.
And it was straight through the corner's hands. Should have been picked. He took a big chance there, and that ball was about, 3-4 yards behind him. Slipped through, went off Kroll's chest. But otherwise, I think he played pretty damn good.
Yeah, you know, and I think I'd honestly rather see the rookie like Haener let it go and make a mistake at full speed.
Let it rip.
Rather than
I think he had him. I think he missed him by a mile. I think he had him.
You sure that wasn't Jameis? Because that's where Jameis did that to Kroll.
That was Haener. I'm almost certain.
Yeah.
I feel like all of Haener's incompletions were should have been. No, there was the one bad one. You're right.
What point in the game are you talking about?
This would have been third quarter.
It was late in the third quarter.
Third long, 3rd and 10,
like
I believe.
Between the 20s?
We were on our side of the field, getting close to midfield. It happened about, I think, it went through his hands at about the 45.
Yeah, I remember it. It was his one bad pass of the game.
He was just a little late on it, and it was behind him by a good amount, and dropped right to the corner. If he throws the ball where it should have been, it's a completion and a great play. But
yeah, I think the thing I like about Haener the most, and it's interesting because we've seen him, like every time we've seen him, he comes in right after Jameis. So you almost have that perfect ability to compare how Jameis has been doing, which, you know, I'm not going to get that far into Jameis, but like this Jameis this year could arguably be a better form of Jameis from the year before he got hurt. But the thing is,
you can tell it still doesn't work though.
It doesn't.
That's what I'm saying.
He's slow processing. He's still he's holding it too long.
It's a refusal to take the outlet over and over again when he's got nothing downfield. He still jams it downfield. But I mean, you see the talent on that deep throw right before half where he drops it right in the only place he could catch it.
And I kind of roll my eyes, like, not because anything against Jameis, but the NFL Twitter account was putting out like, oh, Jameis is cooking, and they throw the Kendre Miller pass. Well, sure, that was a great pass by itself, but he ain't cooking.
No, it was also a better catch than it was a pass, if we're being honest.
He's putting shit in the fridge.
That pass could have been better. It was a great pass, but it could have been a better pass.
It was a greater catch. But look, at the risk of getting into the Jameis discussion again, which has happened to us in the past.
But I want to talk about that real quick from the roster management standpoint, and no negativity towards Haener, but we're in a spot where we have to carry 3 quarterbacks with Taysom still on the roster.
Yeah.
It seems like an odd move this year to draft a quarterback, even though he's been exceptional and by all accounts, looks like he might have a place in this league, at least as a long-term backup. We've got 3.5 positions dedicated to quarterback, which is crazy to me.
I think we're moving away. I mean, even though everyone says Taysom's listed as tight end, but he's really like a third and a half, fourth quarterback.
Let me ask you this.
I do still think that Taysom really is far less of a quote unquote QB than he was, as of even a year or 2 years ago.
I agree with that, except if we find out Carr's going to miss one game, who are you starting? I'm starting Taysom in a second.
Well, that was going to bring me to my next point. Well, I don't know that I wouldn't. I know he's young and raw, but I don't know that I wouldn't throw Haener in there.
I wouldn't. I would start Taysom because it's different. No one's got any tape on what we do with Taysom again, other than previous years. I'm throwing him out there knowing we're going to at least move the ball to a certain extent.
If we're making a Jameis Taysom comparison, I feel like they are both as passers just as inconsistent. Like Taysom might have a great throw, like the toe tap catch that Mike Thomas had against Atlanta. That
Jameis is still a better passer than Taysom by a mile.
He's a better passer, but the rate at which they throw great passes is almost the same. Like Jameis will have a dime and then have a terrible pass into quadruple coverage or just hold the ball and take a sack. Taysom will have like one dime and then he might not throw a INT, well he has, but he might just make the totally wrong read. I think what I've liked out of Haener by comparison, this is what I was getting into, we've seen Haener every time directly after Jameis. So you see Jameis who's indecisive, holds the ball, looking to gun it downfield compared to the guy who comes right in after him who has been very decisive, great with the quick passes, can throw it to the long side of the field, do a couple get away from him out of rookie jitters or whatever you want to call it, sure. But it's been interesting because I think when you compare Haener to Jameis, I've liked the way Haener looks on a consistency standpoint than Jameis.
I think, though, to Nick's point, if we know Carr is out for one game, the coaching staff is probably going to put Taysom in as opposed to Jameis.
Make him defend.
You know it's one.
If it's me, I would roll. I would give Haener the chances. Like Brock Purdy last year for the 49ers. He's a smart, accurate guy. He featured a running game. I know Jameis is not the answer. I know Taysom is not the answer. I would trade Jameis if there were any takers after week 3 of the preseason. Yeah. I would trade him.
I absolutely would too, because if Carr gets hurt week 2 and Jameis is our guy, I don't think we're going anywhere. So there's no need for, even though I like him and the players love him and he's great from a locker room standpoint, carrying that many quarterbacks I think is a detriment to your roster. At this day and age, quarterbacks don't get hurt anymore.
Well, especially when there's guys surfacing that you feel like you can't go to waivers right now, because we're going to get into the roster implications in a little bit, but going through it, a guy like Haener, you don't want to just say, you can't give him the Grayson treatment. You can't just say, he'll end up on the practice squad.
Well, it's different players. He would not make it to the practice
squad.
Correct.
And that's why I say that's why I'm saying from a roster standpoint, my only point is, not even to debate these players, is that we're going to want to keep them on the active roster, and it's eating up a spot because we're stuck keeping everyone else unless there was a buyer for Jameis and we felt good enough about it.
Yeah, right.
If we can get rid of Jameis and get some picks, I think that makes sense from a team standpoint because he's not coming back next year. He's going to go try and put a spot.
And the other thing is he's going to have dead money on the cap next year as it currently stands if you let him walk. So if you trade him, that dead money, I think, can kind of go away a little bit. So
it'll at least be restructured.
I'm all for that and wish him the best and hope he finds a spot. But
yeah. And to finish what I was saying about the game last week, the other player who really impressed was Jalen Smith. I thought he was just flying around the ball, hitting people hard. He looks like he is automatically the third linebacker after Davis and Warner at this point. So that was very encouraging to see.
Yeah, and I would hope he gets that treatment and not – I saw a headline, I didn't read the article, but Dennis Allen said something to the effect of if he wants to make the team, he's going to have to play well on special teams. And I'm like, I think he's earned, over his experience in the league, his talent, what he's at least shown in game 2, I think he's earned the right to say, no, I'm a damn good linebacker. Put me in a linebacker.
That's not how it works, though.
I know it's not how it works, but I don't know. He's
going to have to play special teams. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Bond did, so, Nick, did you have anything in particular besides, the standouts that Max said?
Nope.
Yeah.
Not really on the game. I think those were the main points. Don't the catch by Keandre was the highlight for me. Then, Hainer played well. Lalos the game of his life, probably. I mean, probably never done that even down at the high school level. I don't know.
Or in the XFL.
It was the slowest pass rush I've ever seen, but he just kept getting there and wreaking havoc. He was incredible.
Yeah, he played smart.
Breesy had a good play, penetration up the. He recovered the fumble even after spinning himself out of the play a little bit.
Heads up play, and look, hasn't
the
been
young
done
wide
in a while.
receivers look good too.
Yep. Wide receivers.
Davis looked great.
My boy Kirkland with the heads up play on the first pass from Hainer, the broken play, came back, helped his quarterback out, broke off his route, came back, and then had some good yard after catch. I think he showed his athletic ability on that. He's fast, and what else? Look, we got to give a shout out to Peyton Turner, the guy.
Oh yeah,
showed
absolutely.
up more than he ever has. It's a preseason game, so it's not like he could be a game changer, but the strip that he had, he was really quick off the line, just got to the weak spot of the O-line and made a heads-up move, getting the ball out.
On the big play where Hainer rolled out, that was Merritt caught that ball?
No, that was John Troy Kirkland.
It was Kirkland.
The long one, the 30-something
the
yard?
55, I think it was.
55, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great play by Hainer and Kirkland fading off.
So, yeah, I liked everything that Max said. The only thing I was going to add was Turner. Hopefully we see, the theme I have come away from at least this point in the preseason with is consistency. It's like people are debating, Jameis, how he looked and how Hainer looks, and Turner and Brzee. I got to start saying that right, but it just, to me, it's a simple idea. It's consistency. Who's doing the best most constantly? But then, so my biggest thing I didn't like, and I do think it translates to coaching, is the penalties. I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah, that was outrageous.
The holdings,
Some of them were pretty rough,
Some
again.
penalties couldn't have been penalties, but okay, so let's. How many do we have? 12 penalties. So let's
couple
say,
of the DPIs were kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it seems we deal with that every freaking year.
It happened all last year during the regular season, and it's just kind of like, is DA not going back to his assistant coaches and saying, like, take an entire fucking period and drill on pre-snap, at least. So hopefully when he says, I'll get that cleaned up, I hope he means it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I had from the game. Y'all want to get into what we're looking at going forward in preseason?
Yeah, and
Roster
for
prediction?
everybody listening, this is going to be the first edition of Corey's take on the initial 53-man roster going into week 3 of the preseason. This is AKA Corey's Final Cuts.
Yep. The inaugural. First annual.
The inaugural. So this will be
Corey's
an
Final
annual
Cuts,
thing.
trademark.
We'll start it off, and we'll get through the positions that we think are pretty obvious.
It's the hashtag
quickly.
CFC.
Quarterback, I think we're all in agreement. They're gonna keep the 3.
Yeah, they're keeping the 3.
You can't let Hainer get away, so they're gonna use
The
a
only
roster
way it's
spot.
2 is if Winston gets traded.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not going to assume that at the moment.
Yeah.
So, running back's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
Because AK's out.
So we have on here on the first edition of the CFC, we have Kamara, we got an asterisk because of the suspension, and then you got Jamal Williams, Kendra Miller. I put Williams, Darrell Williams.
Yeah, I'm good. This is where
As a
the
third.
first. This is the first spot where I'm going to differ with you.
I am too, right
Before
there.
you get, my biggest question was whether we end up keeping 3 or 4.
I think you're going to keep 4, and I think it's Ellis Merriweather. I think he gets in over Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams right now is nursing an injury as well, which is not going to help him out at all. And honestly, Merriweather's looked pretty solid when he's played the first 2 weeks of the preseason.
Here's my counter to that. We have similar style backs, and he fits in the similar style back of the other 2.
Who are you talking about now?
Talking about Williams and Miller.
Yeah.
They're both bruisers. He's kind of a bruiser.
I wouldn't call Miller a bruiser, man.
He's a good
But
receiver.
he's downhill. I mean, he can move. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
he's a downhill runner.
Merriweather comps to Jamal Williams to me,
Yeah.
Dead on, right?
but not Miller.
But I'm just saying, from a passing aspect, I think a flyer here is Merritt making the team right out of the gate. As
He's
just
still hurt. That's the problem.
Williams?
He keeps getting banged up. He got banged up again in the game this past week, and he hasn't practiced
But-
this week. I
but
agree
he's
with
not
you.
hurt. He's
We don't know. They haven't really said. I agree with you. All things being equal, no injuries, I keep Merritt on the team as your 4th running back.
just because I don't, there's, Keandre's got
Because
to
he
be in
also
there.
plays wide receiver.
Right, that's what I'm
So
saying.
you got depth, yeah.
flexibility, and you've got a guy who can catch the ball on third down. Just a different wrinkle to that running back committee.
Agreed.
I think the other three are similar. That's my
Yeah.
only negative to that.
Here's a possibility I saw, because when I was putting this 53 together, when I got to Darrell Williams, it was absolutely, for me, between Williams and Merriweather. I think Kirk Merritt is still your classic practice squad guy. I don't think he gets claimed on waivers. But I think with Merriweather, it doesn't mean that he won't at some point in the season get elevated up to the 53. But I think with the suspension early on in the season, I think if they do what they've done in the past, I think they're going to err towards, maybe not every season, but erring towards guys who have been there before, especially early on when Kamara's out. And so maybe come week 4, when Kamara's back and then Merriweather's had a few more weeks on the practice squad, that might be a time where they say, all right, Darrell, you did your job. Thanks for your service. And then they elevate a guy like either Merriweather or Merritt. And it could also depend on the
Well, that
opponent.
won't happen because you're elevating Kamara at that time, right? You'd just be dropping Williams unless you think
but
we're
they're
keeping
always-
4.
You're going to have a fourth running
They're
back.
always...
There'll be
And-
4 on the active roster all season. It's just a matter of who the fourth is. I don't see it being Darrell Williams. He hasn't shown anything. I think if you're going by performance in the preseason so far, it's
Well, I'm talking about
definitely
the first
Merriweather.
3 games here. So then you're saying they're going to keep Williams and Merriweather for the first 3 games?
So you're going to have Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, another running back, probably 2 more running backs.
That's what I'm
actually.
saying. So
Yeah.
you're saying they're both making.
So besides, for the first 3 games, Max, besides...
I think Merriweather for sure. I would keep Merriweather.
And
And
Williams?
look, Merritt, depending on his injury.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes sense. I understand he won't get much run, but just for a different look.
Versatility and also special teams.
Right. That they make sense only for the first 3 games. I think he's dropped right back down.
To the practice squad after
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think he's a 53 for the year. I think for
Right.
these first 3 games, there's a very good chance, if he's healthy, that he is on the opening 53.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that you only kept 3 running backs,
Well, it
not
was-
counting Kamara. Because Kamara doesn't count towards the active roster while he's suspended. So there's
Right.
no way they roll into the season with only 3 running backs.
Yeah, Corey's just saying they're only going to keep 3, and Williams would be there until Kamara gets back, and then they'd get rid of Williams. That's what
But
Corey
even
Yeah.
that wouldn't make sense because they're always going to be 4.
Yeah.
They always keep 4. You're not rolling with 3 running backs. No one does that.
I think they might... I think they'd be inclined to roll with 3
for 3
until
games.
Kamara
They
comes
could do
back.
that. They've done that before.
You know,
I have never seen a team carry 3 running
No,
backs.
when we got injuries in the past, we've run with 3 running backs for games before. That's true.
And,
not for
uh,
long periods of time.
but I think, look...
I'd like for y'all to check that.
I
We
think-
need a stat guy to fact check that stuff.
Yeah, we need like a behind
the games when
producer.
Kamara and Ingram are out, we did not have 4 running backs on the roster for those
Yeah,
couple
they
games.
would sign somebody.
Well, there was a
and bring them on
point
just for that week.
last year, or was it last year or the year before, where like we were so just ripped, banged up at the running back position, we didn't even have a 4th if we wanted one.
The Ian Book game, I don't know if we had 2 running backs.
Yeah.
No, well, that was a special case.
So there were times where we just couldn't do it. Shocker, fullback, Prentice, he's
Yeah.
there. Tight end. Look,
Hold on. I don't even know if Prentice is a guarantee. Maybe.
Well, if you want to talk about us never not carrying 4 running backs, we have never not carried a fullback.
No.
Since
I
Carmichael's
agree. I
been
understand
here.
that. But my point is, maybe this is the situation where you look at your tight end depth and you say, okay, well, maybe Foster can do what Prentice does.
The Saints have always. This
I
is where
understand it's what
they've always had a
they've always done, but this is
full-time
a
fullback,
different-
and this isn't even the.
But we
my
haven't
point.
always
This
kept
isn't
4
Sean
tight
Payton.
ends. We have not always kept 4 tight ends.
Exactly.
either.
Last year we did 4.
Yeah, we have, but there's also plenty of times we did.
Most of the time, they only keep 3. Now, obviously, he plays multiple positions.
So he has to be listed in tight end.
Look, I think that Prentice makes the team. I'm just saying I would not be shocked if he doesn't make the initial 53-man roster after the 3rd preseason game. And there's some movement, and he comes back in like week 2 or 3. Because remember, contracts after week 1 are not guaranteed. So a lot of times you'll
Sure.
see teams go ahead and release players that they fully intend to bring back for week 2.
And we've also seen the Saints use the practice squad or the active roster pretty liberally, depending on the opponent. So if they don't think if they want to spread Tennessee out, then maybe they say, okay, no fullback this game.
Yeah, and look, going under your scenario of only 3 running backs, I mean, they're going to have to carry Prentice at that point.
And that's why that's one of the reasons I kept him on there.
I agree with that. If
If there's only 3, but
so
So I think
We'll see what happens.
Look, I think the fact that we've even talked, and there's every other positions are easier, but I think the running back position is one where there's some tough choices to be made, for sure.
I think there's a lot of players in for that last spot for sure, for the first 3 weeks. And
it's between Merriweather, Darrell Williams, Kirk Merritt. That's
Right.
it. Those are your three.
And
Unless
Merritt-
they bring in somebody. Now, look, we were talking about this earlier offline.
Cream hunt
where
time.
after final cuts,
Yeah.
that's when you'll pick people up. That's when we picked up Will Lutz. That's when we picked up Taysom Hill. So
Yeah, we did say on
maybe
our,
a running back shakes loose that they really like, and he's the one that gets brought in.
That's true.
We did say last 2 episodes ago or last one that our prediction for Kareem Hunt was that they're going to wait till right before the regular season and he's going to come in then.
he'll take the deal.
Yeah.
It could still happen.
Nothing better comes.
So
Tight ends?
Tight ends. I mean, I felt like I had to go with 4 here. Juwan
Well,
Johnson-
I don't count Hill as a tight end. I'm
Yeah.
not counting Hill against in
But
any
it-
position group.
But it doesn't matter. He's on the roster, so he's a
And-
roster spot. So
Right.
if he's tight end or not,
I know people were already
But
talking
we're
about.
really keeping 3 tight ends here.
I know people were talking about Jimmy Graham. Some people out there were saying, "Oh, he's not even a lock to make the team." And then after the arrest/medical
He's on the
issue,
team.
but he's making the team.
I look at your list of Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, and Jimmy Graham. I agree 100%. That's what it's going to be.
Kroll's got to go in, and I do think, and I have it further on the list. I think they pull the old injury settlement out of the bag for Jesse James. He's a more veteran guy, and he's been injured all camp.
Honestly, he sucks.
I don't
so it
care
doesn't
about
really
that.
But they,
I
they're
will
gonna,
say this:
they're going to do one of
Kroll-
those weird Saints things with him, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
if Kroll would have taken his opportunity this game,
he started off great with that great catch.
and then he had a
And then he
couple
had two,
drops
yeah.
where like he
Shouldn't have been
looked
drops.
the part, and then
Yeah.
didn't.
he might have taken Graham's spot at that
He
point.
could have
Could've made it
done
tough.
something for himself.
But as of now, I think your foursome is spot on.
Yeah. Now receiver,
This one's
I've got Thomas Olave, Shaheed, and then this is not what I would prefer, but what I think the Saints are going to do. I think we know A.T. Perry's a lock for the team. So besides those 4, the other 2 I'm going with to round out the 6 that I have making the roster: Kirkwood and Javonte Kirkwood.
Okay, so right out of the gates,
I know you hate
you're
one of
missing the
these.
turd that won't flush, Traquan Smith.
I've got
He's
him.
going to make the team. He's not hurt enough to go on IR.
I've seen players less hurt go on IR. with the
Corey's right
Saints.
about that, but I don't think Traquan's one of these situations where they'll do that.
Yeah, they're
he's
not-
making the
because you
team.
can return from the IR now after 4 weeks.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they're not
so
going to
he's
do
not
it.
going on
They're not
IR.
gonna do it. And we've talked in previous pods that they love Kurtwood because of his blocking. Traquan's a great blocker.
He's a great
At the end of the
blocker,
day. When he's out there, if he's healthy, they're going to have him on the roster.
Yep.
It's just going to happen. To me, that leaves Kirkland out. AT, I said it a week or 2 ago. He's making the team for sure. We all agree now. He's making the team. And I agree with y'all. They seem to just be in love with Kirkwood, and he becomes, for me, the number 6. For them, maybe he's the 4 or whatever. But for me, it's Traquan starting the season on the rocker and Kirkland heading to the practice squad. For me.
Agree.
And part of my reason, and look, Kirkland could very realistically and very well maybe on practice squad. Putting him on the active for me was one of those. Every year there's some kind of surprise move that you didn't see coming. For me, this is that surprise move, and the reason it's the one I chose, and I could be completely wrong.
Well, it's
but
a great story,
but
it's not going to happen.
Well, the story, but also he's one of these guys that the Saints seem to gravitate towards, where he can do a lot of different things. He's got a high football IQ, and he's just super athletic. Can jump out of the gym, run a 4.3 or whatever it was. So
he hasn't
does that
done
mean he's-
anything.
he hasn't done
active-
anything.
He hasn't done anything to elevate himself. He hasn't done anything to lose the spot necessarily.
Yeah.
He's versatile, but the problem is he comes onto a team where, in my opinion, I know Max hates Traquan, but walking into preseason, there were 4 guaranteed players making this roster, in my opinion.
And Traquan.
And then A.T. Perry being drafted, for me, made it a 5th.
Yep.
That leaves 1 spot.
And that spot's Kirkwood.
And that spot's going to be Kirkwood.
No, that's absolutely fair.
Kirkland is a classic. He's the perfect candidate for the practice squad because he hasn't done shit, so no one else is going to sign him. The guy was a free agent 4 weeks ago. Like, no one's going to claim him.
He'll
So
be
on the
wearing.
practice squad.
He'll
It's
be in
fine.
the building.
He's going to play a couple games this season.
He will get in
I'll say
in the
that.
last 4 or 5 games. We'll see him on the
Yeah.
active roster when someone gets
He'll
hurt.
come
Probably
up if we
Shaheed.
have a special teams injury
Yeah.
at a backup spot. He'll come up to fill that role. He'll come up, wide receivers out for a week.
The hot take is that he makes 53. The sure bet is that he's in the building all year.
I agree.
I don't know if it's a sure bet, but
I think it is.
I think
I know
he
they
makes-
would like to have him, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. He could get claimed. I don't
yeah.
think he will, but
All right.
Right, okay.
Offensive
all right,
line.
offensive line.
All right, so
This is
you
set,
got
I
your
think.
starters. I mean, and you're starting 5. It's either in that guard. It's either Hurst or Pete. It's looking like Hurst at this point. And then, so really it comes down to, I say they keep 9, and knowing that Pete is going to be like your 6th lineman at this point, Peter Hurst anyway, besides the starters from last year, it comes down to, for me, I went with the last 3 being Saldivari, Throckmorton, and Landon Young.
So Saldivari you can write in with a magic marker. He's making the team.
Right.
He's absolutely making the team.
That'd be a Sharpie, not a magic.
And
Sharpie, yeah, that's it. Sure.
I was about to say, are you
We're getting rid of him.
Yeah.
I agree with your list of 9. I still think Pete ends up starting if not injured. That's just me.
Yeah.
I know we get all this, preseason talk and all that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter relative to this
Not
conversation.
really, right? But I think you're right on the 9.
I agree with this 9 as well.
Yeah, they're just the guys that they've relied on in the past. The other guys are question marks, and some of them have had.
No, look, we all agree. Let's move on to defense.
All right, so defense, I got them going with 5 defensive ends. You got Jordan Granderson-Turner. We know that. Look, Foskey has to make the team because he's your second.
Too high of a pick.
Yeah,
so
you can't. Not,
unless he
has
comes
to.
up with an injury this week where they can IR him. He's on the team.
They probably really want to IR.
They're probably
him.
hoping he has some kind of injury
they
this week.
want to, but there's no way they're not carrying 5, and there isn't really unless
The
you wanted
only one-
Lalos and you're gonna rock that shit.
I mean that's the thing. As much as I wanted to put Lalos in the 5, it's
You
just
can't.
it's only one game. You know, if he did what he did in the Chargers game in week 1 as well, then you're like, okay, maybe this is like some Trey Hendrickson vibes here. But no, it was a flash.
No, look, your 5, it's set in stone.
It's set in
it's gotta
stone.
be.
There's no debate.
And also, look, passing yards look good so far.
And just to make it short, the defensive tackles, that's set in stone as well.
Yeah, and that's Saunders, Shepard, Brzee, and Roach. You can't not have those 4, and you got to have 4.
Yeah.
Now linebackers, I've got Davis, Warner, Bond. I think Bond to me is like the Traquan of the defense. Even though he's performed better than Traquan,
It's also set in stone, though.
But they can't quit him. They're going to keep on, and so I got Jalen Smith making the team. I think Alan's saying the thing about special teams. Maybe as a shout out to him publicly, like a call out, like you're good, but you're going to have to do this. And then I got Nephi Sewell as the 5th linebacker. I think he's really come along. He was a practice squad guy last year, and he's done what he had to do. Now, with this 5, this means that you're taking the guy that you hoped would show up, a draft pick in DeMarco Jackson, who people were high on, even though he was injured last year, but people liked his potential. But I think at this point, you got to take him and decide what you're going to do with DeMarco Jackson. Does he clear
But
waivers?
you're
Got a
also
practice
thinking
squad?
if you cut Sewell instead of Jackson, higher likelihood he gets picked up than Jackson right now coming off the injury.
Sewell's much more attractive.
He's going to make it to the practice squad and you keep him in the building. That seems to make sense to
I'll
me.
be honest with you. Out of these 5, I agree with him, but I think Bond is the most likely to get either traded or cut out of this group.
He could if you're going to cut bait.
And you could keep DeMarco at that point.
Yeah.
I agree with that, except
Jalon makes him expendable.
Now the other issue, if you look at their depth chart, Connolly was the one listed behind Bond. Connolly was actually listed as a second-string center.
He got hurt, though. So
and he got a significant injury today, so that complicates the linebacker position more to where you can't, have as much flexibility with Bond as you would have hoped.
Yeah.
Moving on from there.
All 4 of the corners are making it. There's no debate. Lattimore, Debo, Taylor,
Yeah,
Roby.
I saw some articles talking about, Roby with his age, that he could be expendable.
No,
but they love
not
him,
true.
like they need him. He's the only one that can fill in for that CJ position.
There's no benefit to really get rid of him right now.
No.
And the depth we have at that position is a huge strength. I just can't imagine.
There's a lot of practice squad candidates behind these guys.
Yeah, and you can have 16 practice squad guys now. It used to be 12.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see a lot of our corners, the first and second year guys, going to practice squad from the group.
Yeah. And so moving on to safety, I've got us keeping 6. It's what we kept last year. And the safety's always a surprising one because remember we kept Daniel Sorensen last year, who, was solid-ish.
He had a good game. He had one good
He had
game.
an interception.
He was a smart player, and that's why the safety position is one where they can make the surprising moves. But obviously they're keeping Matthew May. Now May is another guy who's probably looking at hopefully the suspension comes sooner than later. Now that the DUI case has been settled, he got sentenced to 6 months probation on the DUI. I think it was yesterday or this week. And then Howden is there. He's
Howden's on the team. That's not
I
question.
went with so that's 3. The other 3 I went with.
Well, let's say
if we're
JT
assuming- if
Gray.
we're-
JT Gray is a lot.
JT Gray's a lot because of special teams.
Right.
And this is so the other three with considering May in. So if you got May, Matthew, Howden, JT Gray, the other two I have are Smoke Monday and Lonnie Johnson. I think Smoke's been on the spot. They liked him a lot last year. Got hurt. He's looked good this preseason, and I think
you're forgetting the obvious person that's most likely going to make the team, Ugo Amadi. Rocking the number 0 has performed in every aspect of the offseason.
I think you're biased to him because he's wearing
I love Smoke
0.
Monday. I love Smoke Monday.
So you're
Amadi
saying
has looked good.
Pause real quick.
but
You're saying Monday
I'm
doesn't
saying
make
Monday
it.
doesn't make the roster.
I see. He looks so good this week too. That was
Yeah.
another guy.
Ugo Amadi's look better. I think Ugo makes the team.
I mean, Ugo's looked good. He kind of like Nick said about Kirkland. Like he hasn't done anything to lose the spot. He hasn't made mistakes. He's looked good, but in my opinion, I think there's more upside there with Smoke than Amadi. I think Amadi is more of your classic practice squad guy. I think
Dude, Amadi's a solid player, man. Like he's been in the league for a few years.
He's good. He's good.
He started games. Like he's a solid player.
That's a tough one. I
do
to me,
think
Smoke looked the part.
He was
in
popping.
that game. This
I mean,
last
he
game.
was.
Now,
I didn't see it. I love him. I didn't see it.
Oh man, he kept
you
coming
watch-
up and just hitting.
I watched it. I love
He was
Smoke.
cutting
Maybe
out. He was cutting out routes over and over
Yeah,
again. Like
he was-
just, oh man.
Because the week before he didn't look that good.
Okay, this week, I mean,
Well, he did the tackle, which I didn't even think about it this way, but somebody like put it side by side to it's the last time I'll ever say it on this recording, the Marcus Williams tackle, and I was like, I wasn't even.
He did the Marcus Williams.
I wasn't
tackle.
even thinking about that when it happened.
but did you see this week where same type of thing? He lowers
he
the
popped
shoulder
him.
on the guy and he wrapped the ankles on the way down, and
Yep.
it was flawless.
Yeah,
it was
that's
so
good.
good.
Yeah,
And look, I'm going to go on record saying I hope he makes the team. I just think Amadi has outperformed him so far.
okay. No,
So
that's
could
fair.
Abram be dropped?
Well, see, I
Abram
think
absolutely could.
I think Abram is
You could
there,
get both of those guys.
I think just like the running back situation, I think Abram's there when
Third linebacker.
May is out with the suspension. The only thing is we don't know if the suspension is going to be week 1 or not. with
Abram
May.
could play like I
But-
like
but-
him a little because he can come in on third down if you wanted to be in like a base 4-3
and be a linebacker.
and be a linebacker, and
Yeah.
he's got some versatility that I think works with some of the stuff we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So
Now I've got Lonnie Johnson making the team.
Absolutely. Lonnie Johnson's
Yeah.
making the team.
Yeah.
Because he can also play cornerback. So keep that in mind. You're only carrying 4 corners on your roster. So you need people with position flexibility like a Lonnie Johnson who can slide in and play
Yeah.
corner. Ugo Amadi can also play corner. He's fast as shit. He runs in the 4-3s. I'm just saying, he's a good player.
Yep. All right. So now for the real heavy hitters, the guys who are always giving other people concussions, the specialists.
So I see
I
you've
went with your
got-
traditional. I went traditional. I went Lutz, Gillikin. We know Zach Wood's there.
Yeah, Wood's on the team. They
But,
just signed him to a long-term extension.
But I think we stick with Lutz and Gillikin combo. What do y'all think?
I'm throwing the curveball. I think Groupie makes it and Lutz gets traded to Sean Payton.
Best kicking workout Sean Payton's ever seen.
Exactly.
Peyton does love him, and
They
it's
don't
a
have
pick.
they don't have a kicker.
If there's any coach who would give us a worthwhile draft pick for Will Lutz, it's him and only him.
Right, and
You know.
they have who's their kicker? Right, Brett Maher.
no,
Maher.
they cut whoever it was, so they've been
Well, they
cycling.
cut
was
one guy,
Maher.
but I think but Maher was like hurt or something like that.
They released their kicker from last year, and they've had kicker woes in camp and in the preseason.
Yeah, no, I
since
know
then,
that.
so.
I mean, if Lutz is
I
kicking,
thought they had Maher on the roster as like.
I thought they did too.
Well,
I
let
don't
me
know.
say this: the fact that Will Lutz was kicking field goals in the second half on Sunday tells me that there's something to this whole theory they're showcasing him. They brought him in. I thought they were going to bring in Groupie for the 51-yard kick and say, all right, let's see what the kid can do. They brought Lutz in the third quarter. That tells me they're auditioning Lutz to the rest of the league.
Here's for me, I'm all for that.
I am
Only
too.
because we're paying Lutz top 5
Yeah.
kicker money, and maybe there's someone we can add to the roster that can actually help us this year. And I'm willing to sacrifice the chance that Groupie is slightly less good as Lutz was in his prime.
For $4 million less. a
Right,
year.
I'm willing to do that to
Yeah.
help the roster.
Okay.
Yeah, if Groupie's if he's a hair less than, then it makes sense. So that rounds out the first inaugural Corey's Finals Cuts. I'm sorry, I fucked up.
And look, next week we get
Corey's
to say
final
everything
cuts.
we said wrong, so we'll do that next
CFC,
week.
right. So next week, it'll be after we have wrapped up the preseason. We'll be heading into that pre-week 1 bye week. I'll be at the game, the Texans game. You know, I love my preseason games, stress-free football.
Have fun.
Yeah, have fun with that shit. I hate them.
And
I'll be in an airplane when you're cheering on amongst 28,000
Groupie.
other people.
I'll be going, come on, smoke.
hey, I want Smoke to make the team. I really do. I just think Amadi's been better to this point. So.
Yeah. So anyway, we got the list printed up, and we'll find a way to get it posted on the Twitter so y'all can at away at us and rip us apart if you disagree. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this episode of the 28-3 podcast. We'll get you next week after the final cuts are made. So until then, see ya.
See y'all later.